Jehovah Shabbaoth, or Yahweh Shabbaoth, and it stands for Lord Almighty. Hopefully I'll remember whatever it was I was going to write down. So, if somebody was asking you, what's God like, how would you describe him? If somebody asked you what God is like, how would you describe him? Undescribable. You can't put him in a box, that's for sure. But we can know some things about him.
All in all.
All in all. Anyone else? Yes. Omnipresent, omniscient, and yes. Okay, let me ask it this way. How would people, just normal everyday people, describe God? Not necessarily Christians, but just how would they describe God? Invisible? Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't have any idea at all. Right?
Some people say it's made up.
Yes, that's true.
You hear on certain pages it's just a fairy book.
Yeah. Some people would say he's like a cosmic killjoy, that he doesn't want to let you do anything that's fun. Some people would say he's out there just watching, waiting for you to mess up so he can, hit you with a lightning bolt or something. But
They think that lightning comes from.
yeah, I know. Where does lightning come from? That's right.
Someone asked me, well, how can you believe in God? Look what he did to you. I said, maybe it wasn't God, maybe it was the devil.
Yeah.
Who did it to me to destroy my faith.
Right.
And maybe it's that.
Yeah. This term, this phrase, the Lord Almighty, it's actually almost 280 times in the Bible, but it's translated as Lord Almighty most of the time, but sometimes it's Lord of Hosts. Okay, if he's Lord of Hosts, who are the hosts? What hosts are they talking about? And what does that term talk about? The angels, that's right. In fact, it's more specifically the army of heaven, or the angel army. It is a military term, the Lord of Hosts, the Lord Almighty. It's a military term, and it shows that we don't normally think of God as being like captain of the army of heaven, but yeah, that's kind of what this term means. And it's a good thing because he's there when we need him. He'll fight our battles for us, right? It's used in multiple times, like I said, almost 280 times. The first one, and by the way, the PowerPoint, for some reason we've lost the password to my Dropbox, and I don't remember what it is, so we don't have it to put up here. So y'all are just going to have to listen and try to keep up. But the verse I wanted to start with is Isaiah 6, and this is when Isaiah is called to ministry, and it is a very well-known passage, a very powerful passage too. It says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and his train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphs, each with 6 wings. 2 they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty, Jehovah Shabbaoth. The whole earth is full of his glory." And another place that I liked is Psalm 24. It says, "Who is he, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty. He is the King of glory." So he's one that we can call on when we're in trouble. Or I put, when I did this before, I said when we're in deep trouble, we can call on him. But we can call on him at any time, right? But any kind of trouble at all. One of the quotes that I read was that you call on God when you're hip deep in alligators and there's no way to drain the swamp. Hip deep in alligators and there's no way to drain the swamp. I wanted us to look at a couple of examples, maybe a third one. I put a third one on there. The third one doesn't have the term Lord Almighty in it, like the other two, and so I'll give you the word if you want it later. But the first one is Hannah, and I wrote this as her being oppressed. Who is Hannah? You'll remember? Elkanah and Hannah. You're a granddaughter? Hannah was the mother of Samuel. And if you remember, she was barren. And Elkanah had another wife named Peninnah. And Peninnah made Hannah's life miserable. Hannah was the favorite wife, probably the first wife. Elkanah probably married Peninnah because Hannah was barren and wasn't having children, and they were very, very important. And so he probably married Peninnah in order to have kids, and she did have kids. And then she would kind of tease and flaunted it, and just really gave Hannah a hard time. And that's why I used the word oppressed, because Hannah felt that way. This is found in 1 Samuel chapter 1. It says, year after year, in verse 3, year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh. So this is Elkanah. This is where he would go and worship, and he would take Hannah and Peninnah and their whole family. And this is that 1 Samuel 1:3. That's the first time the word Lord Almighty is used. It says that they went to sacrifice to the Lord Almighty. So you know the story. Hannah was barren, being teased all the time, and they got there. What do you remember about what happened at Shiloh, at the tabernacle? Eli, yeah. Hannah was praying, and Eli, yeah, Eli thought she was drunk, and she said, no, I'm not drunk, I'm just burdened. And then Eli said, well, may your request be granted, basically. And what was her request? To have a baby. More specifically, a son. And what did she say if God granted that request? What was she going to do? She'd give him back to God. That's right. And so she did. She got pregnant. She had a son, named him Samuel. And after he was weaned, probably around 2-3 years old, she took him back to the temple, and he lived at the temple and assisted Eli. Most people believe also that he was a Nazarite, had the Nazarite vow. Do you remember any of the requirements of a Nazarite?
Can't shave, no drinking.
No shaving, no drinking, no fruit of the grape of any kind, no alcohol of any kind, but no grapes, no raisins, I'm sorry, what? Yes, no cutting of the hair. And it's usually for a short period of time, but in his case, it was basically his whole life. But the point is, Hannah felt oppressed. She felt, like everything was against her because she couldn't have kids. And so she went to God. She went to the Lord Almighty. And this is found in verses 10 and 11. It says, in bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. And that's why most people believe he was the Nazirite vow from the very, from when he was born.
My Bible says
Yeah, Lord
Lord of Hosts.
of Hosts. Yes, like I said, that's interchangeable. Lord Almighty, Lord of Hosts depends on the translation. So, what translation are you using?
That had to be hard
Oh.
because, she finally has one and then she doesn't get to.
Right.
She could probably watch it grow up in a certain sense, but not like normal.
Every year, she would make a new clothes for him and take it up there. Yeah. Let me see, where am I at here? And because she was barren, basically what she was asking for was a miracle. And God granted it. And instead of complaining about her situation of not having kids and getting all upset and mad at God, she went to God. How many times do we do that when something is bothering us and all, we complain to God like the children of Israel did? We complain a lot, but do we really take it and leave it to Him and say, you take care of it, and trust Him to even work a miracle? Hannah was the only woman in the Old Testament that it talks about going to the house of the Lord, making a vow to the Lord, praying, only prayer in the Old Testament, I think, from a woman. And her prayer, I like this, her prayer was mentioned, the name of God, 18 times. And it says, avoid the same mistake that Sarah made when she laughed and she, everything that she did. And she was willing to give him back. Anything else stand out to you about the story of Hannah?
She did have other children.
Yes, she did. After that, she had other children.
I
Oh,
knew that.
yep.
That's good.
Yes.
A lot of times, like us or I say like we take a praise the Lord, and if He does something like Hannah there gave it, she went ahead and fulfilled her vow
Vow.
to the Lord.
Right.
We'll do it, and hey, then we get what we forget it a little while down
Yep.
the road and stuff and things. And one thing that Bob ever talked about, old Steve Hendry, bless his soul, he already says different times that he took and prayed the Lord was in the foxhole. If you get me out of this, I'll serve you when I get home.
Yeah. Yep. And he did, just not right away. I've talked to him many times about things that way. Yeah.
She made him a garment.
Yes. Every year.
Back to him.
Yes. Yes, she did. Yeah. Yeah. What are those called? Battlefield promise or something that way. When you're, think that the end's near and you say, God, please help me get out of this. If you do, I've heard lots of stories about people doing that, and then they turn around and say, oh, never mind, I made it. All right, so when we are feeling oppressed, we definitely need to go to the Lord. The second example, David and Goliath, I called this being overwhelmed. Now, David, I don't know that he really felt overwhelmed, but all of Israel did. They were. I like one thing I read about it. It said that whenever our problems seem so big, all we want to do is run away. That's what most of the Israelites were feeling. Used to have a video series at one of the churches I was at. I really think it was maybe Temple in Gainesville, Texas. But it's called Adventures in Odyssey. And it's kind of like what's the other one with Bob and Larry and VeggieTales. Very similar to that. It's a cartoon, and they'll take the biblical stories and they'll make them a little bit modern and definitely for kids, but they have the same story, the same lessons to be learned. And in this one, there was a big snowball fight over some warm chocolate chip cookies, and the captain of the army, they had the other army had some really big kids, and so the captain was asking his men, trying to rally them together, and he looked at them and he said, "Are you warriors or wimps?" And they all replied very loudly, "We're wimps, sir." Yeah, that's kind of what the Israelites were doing. I mean, they looked at Goliath and it just terrified them, and they ran away and fled. This is one of my favorite stories, and probably is for yours too, one of yours too. He volunteers to fight the giant, right? So tell me the rest of the story. David and Goliath, tell me the story.
He volunteered
To fight the giant. Yeah. What did he do before he did that?
Gathered his pebbles.
Yeah, got his stones. How many? 5. And a lot of people were always wondering, why 5? Have you heard?
No, that's why I said, why 5?
I've heard, and I don't know, but I've heard that Goliath had 4 brothers, and he was just going to be prepared. I don't know. I don't know that there's any significance of 5, but it does say he gathered up 5.
They must have been the perfect stone for giants.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think it was the stone. I think it was God.
Well, yeah.
I
But hit the right place, it probably was the main thing.
Yeah. I have some rocks in I think it's in my study at home, that came from Israel. And I asked the lady that was going, I asked her to bring me 5 stones so I'd have the 5 rocks like David. And she said, "But I'm not going anywhere near that spot." And I said, "You wouldn't have to tell me that. I wouldn't know one from another." But she did bring them back to me, and I've lost one over the years, so I only have 4. Actually, I have 5, but the 5th one came from the Dead Sea, and it's a lot bigger. I mean, the others are all just about the right size, but she brought them back to me. Okay, he volunteers to fight. Then what happened? David volunteered to fight the Goliath. So what happened?
Well, first thing his brother got mad.
Brother got mad. Yeah. That's big brothers.
Beat 'em up with armor.
Saul tried to put his armor on him, which was too big. He wasn't used to it.
The sword was too heavy.
Yep. So what did he do? He took his sling that he was used to using, because he did that as a shepherd. And what did he tell Saul? Do you remember? What did David tell Saul about the animals that had attacked his sheep?
Slayed them with this slingshot.
Yeah, I killed a lion, I killed bear with the sling, and in it, I don't know whether I have this one. No. Yeah, this is later. He tells Saul, he said, "The same God that delivered me from the hand or the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the paw of this giant too." Used the same word all 3 times, which I always thought was kind of neat.
Yeah, like the lion and the bears are most of the animals bigger than they are now.
Yeah, that may have been. Yeah, I haven't really heard that, but could be. He did. He ran towards him.
The thing is, he didn't have hand-to-hand combat or
Right.
anything that would go boom. I mean, this was something that would carry away from him and still be dangerous and from the
Yeah,
animals or
right.
and he didn't have to worry about being close enough to be attacked, I'm assuming, by the
Well, I don't know how far you could throw a stone and
Slinging it,
yeah,
you have to be pretty good.
and still be enough to knock the giant out. It says it sunk into his head. So I would think it would have to be fairly close, though. I mean, it's not going to be, 100 yards away. I think it's going to be maybe 20, 25 yards away when he did it. That's just in my opinion. But
Wasn't there some space between them? I mean,
a little bit, yeah, between the armies, definitely. Just a big valley.
valley, something, I was thinking there was something that separated them.
Yeah. And David, this is found in 1 Samuel 17, in verse 43. Goliath said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." And David said, this is the important part, "You come against me with a sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, Jehovah." Yeah, I just went blank. Shema. Sabaoth, yeah, the Lord Almighty, and the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. I've preached on this before, and it always gets me. What do you think Goliath felt or thought? Have you ever thought about it? Yeah, well, yes and no.
Like a little ant down there, I'm not worried about him.
But he is out there really challenging Saul, basically. Because remember, Saul was a head and shoulders above everybody else. But he's out there challenging and saying, "You bring out your best warrior and fight me, and whoever wins," that way we just have the one-on-one instead of having everybody fight. You just bring out your best warrior and I'll fight him. And what do they send out? This scrawny little kid. I mean, in a sense, that was a big, insult, slap in the face. That, hey, this scrawny little kid can beat you. We don't have to worry, which is true, But I'm sure that really angered him, thinking that they'd send out this little kid instead of instead of Saul especially. And
How old was David when he did this?
probably 16, 17, somewhere around in there. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know. Well, I don't think anybody knows exactly here on earth anyway. But that's my guess. And then drop it down to verse 47. It says, "All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." And it says, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle. Like he said a while ago, he ran toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching his bag, he took out a stone. He slung it, struck the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hands, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. And it says later, I didn't put it in there, that he takes Goliath's own sword and cuts his head off with it. Kills him, cuts his head off. Some things that we can learn from this. Number one, we are going to face battles. We've talked about this before, we are in a spiritual battle, and we're going to face giants. And they might not be actual people. It might be anxiety, fear, doubt, enemies of all kinds. And we will be tempted to look at the size of the giant instead of looking at the size of our God. That's what the children of Israel did when they came to the promised land and they sent out the spies. 10 of them came back and said, "Oh, the giants live there." And it even says, we seem like grasshoppers in our eyes compared to these people. And you got to remember that it's not us. The battle's not ours. The battle is God's. Don't try to fight giants with somebody else's solution. That's what David, Saul was trying to get him to use his armor and stuff that way. Don't run away from your problems. Don't try to escape through entertainment, drugs, anything else. Vocalize your trust in God. And remember who you are. You're a child of the King, right? And remember that God is Jehovah Shabbaoth, the God Almighty. Just read last week, I think he mentioned it Sunday, last week or the week before, we read 3 different accounts of how one angel wiped out 185,000 Assyrians. So remember, God is all-powerful. And then the last one, and this is the one that doesn't use the word Jehovah Shabbaoth, is that when you are outnumbered, remember to trust in God. Elisha and Gehazi. Gehazi is Elisha's servant. You may remember he's the one that when Naaman came and was healed, he went and tried to get something from Naaman, some clothes and some silver, and hid it, and ended up being the leprosy came to him and his family. But this happened, I believe, before all of that. The king of Aram decided to attack the Arameans, attack the Israelites. And so they got their forces together, and they went to attack, and they weren't there. And they heard they were over here, and they went over there, and they weren't there. And the king got really mad, thinking that that he had somebody in his midst that was one of his men in his army was telling him. And they said, no, it's not us, it's Elisha. He's a prophet. And God tells him everything that you decide I think it said everything in your bedroom. He lets Elisha know, so he knows what you're going to do before you do it. And so then he sends his whole entire army to defeat or to take Elisha. And this is found in 2 Kings chapter 6, but it is a good illustration of Jehovah Shabbaoth. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15, it says, when the servant of the man of God got up and went out, this is Gehazi, when he got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh, my Lord, what shall we do? The servant asked. Don't be afraid, the prophet Elisha answered. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And I have it was a friend of my brother's that had taught on this and used it several times, and I got this story from him, but he can see Gehazi looking up there. There's more with us than are with him, and him looking at this vast army and start counting 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, 1,000. And then he turned and said, 1, 2. That's kind of how we do a lot of times. We see all of this thing happening, and we forget that God is with us, and we just count the 2 of us or whoever. But then Elisha prayed in verse 17. Elisha prayed, O Lord, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. The army of angels surrounded the other army. And yes, those with them, the army of angels was much more than the army of Arameans. And it reminds me, of Romans 8:31. If God's before us, who can be against us, right? And he asked him to strike with blindness, which he did. God did that. And so then he led them right into Samaria, to the capital city. And the king was, he was shocked and said, should I kill them all? And they said, no, just feed them, send them home. And so that's what he did. There's a fish, and I was going to bring a picture of it, but it's on Dropbox too. But there's a fish called the four eyes fish. Four eyes fish. It actually just has two, but in each of his eyes, he has two sets of pupils and retina and all of that stuff. And so it's like a double eye in each side. And the lower half has a film that covers it, and basically they come right up to the surface of the water, and they can see above the water and below the water at the same time. And the illustration was that we need to have that kind of eyes too, where we see the physical world, but we also, in our mind at least, see the spiritual world, that God is there. The angels are there. They're there to help us, and we are not alone. There's a book called, This Present Darkness. Have any of you ever read that? I know Celia has. A guy named Peretti. It's a good book. It's fictional, but it's a good book. But he talks about this town and different things that are going on, and then gives a glimpse of the spiritual world, what's going on in the spiritual world. So you get to see both the physical world as well as what's going on in the spiritual world. And to me, it just helps us to remember that, we do have angels that are helping. We have God. We have, all of that behind us. And it was based on Ephesians 6:12, which says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms." And we're not alone. The psalmist said in Psalm 3:6, "I will not fear 10,000s drawn up against me on every side." And that's kind of what Elisha and Gehazi saw. And then I'll end with Psalm 84:12. It says, "O Lord Almighty," which is Jehovah Shabbaoth, "blessed is the man who trusts in you." So, any other questions or comments? Or
Did you have a phrase that was going, or a word that was going in front of all of these
Mhm.
in particular? We never picked up, we didn't get the words. I thought, thought maybe we were
Uh,
just not listening.
oppressed, Hannah,
That was Hannah.
oppressed, yeah.
Oppressed,
And then overwhelmed,
and then what?
overwhelmed. And they'll start with O too. And then outnumbered.
And then outnumbered. Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't even think of putting it on a flash drive and bringing it, because that's been working great.
I thought maybe we missed something. I didn't know.
And that's why
Made us
I like having that up there. But,
Made us listen harder.
yeah, right.
Well, I wrote something down, I scribbled it out, so it wasn't right.
Did you pick out a song? Okay. Let's stand and join hands, and we'll sing the chorus.